Okay, how are you? Congratulations. You made it another day, and that's always good news when you make it another day. Thank you for joining us here on Group W Cable. Russ, Gibb at random, jumping up and down. And we've got a very interesting guest for you today, a gentleman who I've known personally for about 4 years, but he is so well known in the community, particularly if you graduated from good old Dearborn High, Mr. Bob Knoop, Councilman Bob Knoop, and we'll be talking with Bob in just a few minutes here. But while we're looking over my notes here, there's some things that are making me go crazy, per usual. I don't know about you, but do you perceive the Soviet Union as any kind of threat? I mean, do they bother you at all? Do you think they're just there and they're nice guys? Are you that naive that you believe that they wouldn't move if they could? After all, the Russians were nearly destroyed. So the Soviet Union was nearly destroyed in the Second World War. And, of course, Napoleon came in and Hitler came in, and they finally decided that no way are they ever going to let that happen again. So they have built up the most powerful military force the world has ever had a chance to witness. And believe me, they perceive us as their enemy. But, you know, I don't think they'll ever have to fire a shot, because most of their gains have not been made militarily, but it's by subversion. Not by direct aggression, but by subversion. And by getting people who they call, they have a word for them, and I forget, knowledgeable fools. People in the countries that they want to attack, they sell them the party line. And they call, I believe that term is knowledgeable fools. And they use people, and believe me, I think they're using some of our people, our own American people, who are gullible, are being used by the Soviet Union. Have you ever wondered where all the money comes for all these peace marches? Where does that dough come from? Who supplies that? How does that get there? You know, it costs a lot of money. Say you want to mount a little campaign just to protest a school closing or something. You know, somebody has to shell out money for the signs and everything. And here they bus people in from all over the country. They have great signs. They have offices and organizations. Do you ever wonder where that money comes from? Well, I do. Well, maybe I'm just naive. Maybe, you know, maybe I'm just a little bit simple-minded myself. What do you think? Oh, you probably agree. And by the way, if you'd like to disagree with me or agree, please drop me a card here at Russ Gibb at random, Group W Cable, Mercantile Drive, Dearborn, Michigan, and then, you know, you can have your say. I enjoy reading your letters and cards. Speaking of reading letters and cards, you read the other day where a congressman gave himself a $9,000 raise? $9,000. We'll have to ask Councilman Knoop how much a councilman in Dearborn makes. I'm sure it's nowhere near that amount. And yet our congressmen, I think, are probably up to around $60,000 a year, plus the perks. And the perks is where it really, really gets you. Well, I don't know about you, but that burns me up. Speaking of sad things, Jail Hudson closing. And I said, when I saw the photographs the other day of the old building, all of a sudden I had sort of a funny feeling. And there was one of the newspapers, I think it was the Detroit News, had a photograph of those bronze or brass water fountains down there. Remember they used to have a little one for little kids? And that was up on the 12th floor in the toy department. Talk about memory rushes. Talk about deja vu. It certainly was a rush when I saw that photograph. Hudson's. And yet, you know, why should we be surprised? If I were Hudson's, I would have moved out of downtown Detroit a long time ago. Until you get strong police, until you get judges that are willing to get tough with criminals, I don't know how any business can survive down there. Frankly, at night, it's a jungle. It's just a jungle. Most law-abiding citizens won't go down there. And whether that's real or a perceived fear, the fear is there. And until we get strong support by the police, and we support our policemen, you know, you're going to have more and more of that take place in downtown Detroit. And let's face it, the Renaissance, that building is a joke. You can't even find your way around it. When are we going to start getting smart? Why doesn't our media come out and say these things? They pussyfoot around everything, and they make us believe that everything is okay. And WDIV brags about spending millions of bucks to stay downtown Detroit. If you look at the building, it looks like an armored fort. Well, that's my opinion. What's yours? Back again, Russ Gibb, jumping up and down with my guest today, Councilman Bob Knoop, a gentleman that did so many things for the Dearborn Public Schools, became so well associated with the Dearborn Public Schools that I think you were one of the top vote getters in the last election. Right, Bob?
Well, I was very fortunate I ran third. It was my first time.
For the first time out, that's incredible.
Yeah, first time I've ever run for a public office. And I had tremendous people working, and we had a good campaign.
I got to ask you about your thing. You know, I was first taken by you. I did not know you until about 3 or 4 years ago, but I'll tell you, when I saw your logo, you know, the face,
right.
And it was always done in red and white,
right.
And there was a line drawing. Who did that? That was a neat logo politically.
Well, we had a group of people that we formed, and we came up with some thoughts and ideas on what we should do to make it different. Of course, my size, my structure, you wouldn't want to go out and put on the campaign literature my real picture.
Why?
I think that,
You're a healthy-looking man.
That's right, you know, but I think that, you know, you come up with something. And we talked of the type of a picture that we would draw an outline of, and we tried to one of the whole body, and we sent it out, and some friends of mine did a lot of artwork on it, and we went ahead and got that thing going, and when you brought the body back, there was no room for anything else, because the body was so big and the face was kind of smaller, so the thought came out of the head part came out very well, and I was very fortunate. I had some people like Susan Ryan who worked with me from the very beginning. Also, she did work with me on the Citizens for Sports and Kids group.
Would that be Dick,
and,
Dick
Ryan's? Yes. And Susan is very talented in these ideas, and it was basically her idea on this thing. And between her and Tom Snyder and Ken Shields and myself and Bob Puffer, this is the theme we came up with. And
it worked.
Oh, yes. And it's funny because when we went to the printer, and Slowicki and Sons down in Detroit, the guy said, I don't think this idea is going to work.
And yet that's the one thing I bet a lot of people mentioned.
Right,
too.
oh, everybody.
It looks a little bit like the Alfred Hitchcock thing that he used to do in the old adventure series that he had on television.
Yes, yes, it did.
Tell me, Bob, the background, you're a Dearborn man, born and bred, right?
Right.
And where'd you grow up? What part of Dearborn?
Well, it's funny is I grew up in the Edison School area. One of the old Ford homes is where we originally grew up, and we later in life, in fact, Russ Catherman, a gentleman that just passed away, who was very well known in Dearborn, now had moved his house from over by the Southwestern School, which is now called the Duvall School,
right,
over and across the street into the lot where I used to have my gardens and play ball years ago.
So you grew up across the street from Russ Catherman?
Well, where he lives now,
right.
But he wasn't there at that time. He was over a couple blocks away at that time. But they moved the whole total house over to give him more room over at Duvall School for a playground area.
So then you really attended?
I attended, which was called Mr. Duvall was the principal at that time of the Southwestern School. And I attended there. I attended Edison School, which is now closed. I attended Dearborn High School, which is now being closed. And I got a bad track record. I guess.
Every school that you go to, they close.
Right? Yeah. And
then Dearborn High.
Yes, Dearborn High, which was the Adams School, better known. It was the old Dearborn High. I never attended
the original one.
The original one, right?
And by the way, that's a problem. What they plan to do with it. You know, frankly, you can't keep every building in Dearborn, but in another sense, that building is a beautiful building. What's your feeling on that? What should the city do on that?
Well,
do you think it's a city problem?
I have mixed emotions. Many people have called me because my total family, my brother, my sister, my brother's wife, my sister's husband, myself, and my wife, Joyce, all graduated from that school as Dearborn High School. And my brothers and my children both went there as Adams. So that people said to me, well, you know, you really got a lot of interest in this school. I do have, but Russ, I really believe the cost of repairing that school is just too exorbitant. We can't afford to fix it up and to have something in this.
Because the schools can't do it.
Oh, that's right. No,
and then the city,
yes.
if they took on that burden, that would just be another burden that we have already, and we're cutting revenues, right?
Oh, this is right, and it's something that I think it's tough. It's been there. The block has been there for years. The Salisbury School, but the heating system is totally gone, and it would cost so much to heat it and to redo it, because if you put in there any type of things, you have to tear out all the plumbing, the walls, and everything. The cost would be so great.
So you think probably it'll be torn down? That's your guess?
I would hope. I really believe it. I'd like to see it torn down. I would like to see, if you look over there on the next corner right across from, we have the Morley Manors.
Right.
That overlooks Ford Field, and I would like to see something.
Maybe a high-rise?
Of something in that structure.
Maybe apartment complex for young people.
Just like that. Well, not young people so much, but maybe we can get some of the older people to move in there so they're close to uptown. They'll put their house on the market and they'll
then
sell.
The young people go there, and then we
come there
similar to what they have
house.
downtown on the east side with that apartment in the parking lot on the east side of Dearborn. I don't know which one. Is that the Sisson?
Well, that's a senior citizen.
Senior
no,
citizen.
I don't. No, we don't need a senior citizen one there. I think it should be for people. Well,
This would be a commercial endeavor?
Let's face it this way. My wife wouldn't go along with it, but you know, it's funny. Today, my son's getting married, and that's the last one at home. It's the last one at home, and you know, it'd be kind of nice if somebody like us, who don't need a 3 or 4 bedroom home anymore, could move over there into something like that and be close.
You wouldn't have the lawn, and you wouldn't have the garage and all the tools, and you can just have a good life.
Well, I don't do the lawn anyway. I don't
today.
do the lawn anyway. My wife does.
Who's he marrying?
Ann M. Overstag.
One of the families in Dearborn.
One of the families.
Certainly one of the first families in Dearborn.
Yes, we're uniting 2 fine Dearborn families. I think it's a, you know.
What son is getting married now?
Bobby.
That was the football player.
Yes, a baseball player.
Baseball player.
Yeah, baseball, football player.
And he's marrying?
The youngest of the M. Overstag family.
Now, as I recall, your boy was always an outdoorsman, wasn't he?
Loves it.
How about his wife? Now, you sort of think of that society family. Is the young woman into that type of thing?
Fortunately, she's probably a little better than he is, and on the outdoor stuff, you know, she's. We were at a party last night, and the family was sitting there, and some people came in from Arizona, but she goes out on a 5-day ride through the hills and out and through there, and they want him to come down there because they want to teach him how to ride a horse. He doesn't know how to ride a horse.
So
she's a big horseback rider.
You're going to have 2 young people in your family that are deep into environmental and into hunting and all those neat things, outdoors people.
Oh yeah, they love the sports, and she's very knowledgeable on the.
A perfect match.
We hope so, and I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be.
Tell me, Bob, you go back into the old days of Dearborn, as I do. What's your feeling about the past and the present state of the city, how you remember Dearborn and what's going on today? Good, bad, indifferent, what?
Well, there's times, I think times change so quickly, and especially in our lifetime, yours and mine, we've seen so many things happen. We've seen the television go, and every one person on the street finally got one, and now everybody's got 3 or 4 of them in their house. And we were very fortunate in the city of Dearborn that we did have a good very cheap tax base for the individuals.
Back when we were growing up, it was the Ford Motor Company. They paid the majority of taxes.
This is right. And we were fortunate that the schools could have a lot of extra money to run on, and the city had some extra money to run on. And it was an ideal situation for somebody to be the mayor of a city at this time, because you had the extra money to go out and do things. And today, the government says we can't do things this way. We must now tax it, equalize the tax out, and our taxes have gone up. The cost of doing business goes up, everything, and so we now cannot offer some of the things that we offered in the past, and it's just a cycle. And it was funny because when I decided to run for this office, I said the next 4 years would be the toughest 4 years the city's ever seen, and the first year in it has been very tough, but I think we've come through it very well. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think that we need a lot of work. We got to get in the city, I think, the pride back.
Pride.
You know, we've all put our heads down and we've all relaxed. We've all gone out and done other things, and now the world times have slowed down back a little bit again, and we all have some more time to spend. And I think everybody should spend a little bit more time in trying to do something for the city and the community.
Well, you remember in the old days when Hubbard first started, he had a slogan about if everybody would sweep their own doorstep, the city would be a better place, or the world would be a better place.
This is right. This is right.
And, you know, that's one thing I've noticed, our city. It's not as clean as it used to be. And I'm not sure that's the fault of the administration. I came by a store on Cherry Hill and Telegraph the other day. Store I go into, and the guy has a neat business in there. And yet on the outside, right in his doorway, there was a lot of litter.
Right.
Or I go over here to a place on Greenfield and Michigan Avenue, a great big store there, and litter. Yeah. Now that means that those of us that live here and people that do business here just throw things away and they don't take care. But in the old days, they used to get out and sweep,
yes,
you know, 2 or 3 times a day.
People took much more pride, and I think that's the thing. And I think people went through a time that they kind of got a little lax and a little bit lazy, and we all have a tendency to do this.
That's right.
I know that at times I say, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow instead of today. And I think this is the thing that we have to do. We got to stop putting off what we can do today till tomorrow. And I think that if we all get into this thing and get our pride back, bring our community closer back together, and clean it up, I think this is the biggest thing. And again, it's not the administration's fault, because they can't be doing it all.
That's right. You have to take.
That's right.
The average citizen has to do something.
If a man takes his trash out in front of his house and he takes it out there in a bag and it's torn open and blows around the neighborhood, that's the person's fault. That's his responsibility. And somebody should get on him in his neighborhood and say the same thing with the stores. If somebody isn't going to keep their store clean, people should go in there and say, I'm not coming back into this store
until
anymore.
Until
you clean up your act and clean up your store.
You know, there was a lot of complaint when they brought in these fast food stores like McDonald's and Burger King. But I will say this, they keep those places immaculate.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And I wish some of our small business people would do that in
Yes.
front of their
Yes.
establishments. Yes. What about Dearborn, the Greenfield Village? What do you feel about that? I've always felt that's a great asset to this town, and yet somehow I feel that it's there, and yet it's not there as far as Dearborn is concerned. What can we do about that?
Well, I think we have, again, the big problem we have, and it has been because we're a community of like 3 separate cities.
Mm-hmm.
And our governments have always functioned in the same line. The village, a lot of people don't think it's for the average person in the city of Dearborn. And I think that's what we got to bring back. I think we've got to, the people in the city government, the people in the schools, and the people that are tied in with Greenfield Village have to get together and work hard to put this thing all together into one
So we're
group.
working together.
So we're working together because with Greenfield Village, well, it was happened to leave Dearborn or happened to close because of financial problems. It would hurt the city
Badly.
very badly, very badly. It's a beautiful. It's a
great
thing.
tourist attraction.
Oh, it's a great tourist attraction, but people in this area don't even bother to go there.
And of course, the guy raised the rates to about $8, you know, and that turns a lot. That's a lot of money just to go in there.
Well, it is, but somebody doesn't think a lot of money to go to a show for one.
That's right,
and
a
he's
concert
spend 3
ticket.
hours, a concert ticket, and he can go there and spend the whole day.
So when you look at it that way,
it's fantastic because there's a lot more history and there's a lot more things in there, and the cost of doing things in there and the cost of having it done is just tremendously.
Bob, you've been talking about these things, but what are you as a council person doing to bring this about, bringing people together? Are there any movements? I know you're involved in the West Dearborn redevelopment, but are there other plans that you have? Are there other committees that people should be aware of that are trying to make these things happen?
You say, what do I do as a councilman? I don't think it's what Bob Knoop can do personally. I think it's what everybody can do. We have to work together. No one person can do anything. We have to be able to get together with the people. We have to get our people from the East and West Dearborn together to get them to understand each other, understand the problems of the city. What is good for West Dearborn, not necessarily is good for East Dearborn, and we got to get the school people involved and more with us, and we got to understand each other's problems, and we have to work together as a team because I'll tell you, Russ, I think that I know that I'm very happy, again, that I mentioned this, that my son will stay in this area like I did, and I love it here, and I think it's the finest place in the world to live.
It's a great place to grow up.
This is right. It's just fantastic, you know. I guess I have a cottage out by Jackson, and I keep going there less and less all the time, and it's nice to go out there and lay down and relax, but it's not Dearborn.
Yeah.
And I don't go to Florida, and I don't go to Hilton Head. Of course, I couldn't afford to go to those places, but if I could go places, you know, if I could go places, and people say, why don't you come out and visit us? But this is my home. I love it here. I love the city. And by God, you know, I still say we're still number one.
Well, I agree with you. And I think that our town does need to be brought together again. And I guess, you know, I didn't realize that years ago, I knew it, but I didn't pay any attention to it, that there was a feud between the Hubbard administration, the old Hubbard administration, and the schools. And I think maybe that's where the schools drew away, or the city drew away from the city. And yet,
there's no
that's
question.
what you're talking about, trying to bring that together.
There's no question, and that this is what has happened. And of course, the length of space between Dearborn, or we say East and West Dearborn, which has always been buried by the woods back in there, and the Florida States, and now is even buried by the Fairlane District, the Fairlane Shopping District, is caused a big problem to that point too. And so I think that, you know, if we can get the schools and the city working back together, maybe sometime, you know, our dreams are, and other communities have it, is where they have a complex that all the schools use together, where they have their facilities. And brought back
like in Texas.
Like in Texas.
You mentioned
yes,
that one time.
I mentioned that one time. This is right. I spent about 4 days in Dallas, Texas, and they had a outdoor facility out there, which took in, and an indoor facility, and three different high school, different school districts use it.
Swimming.
Oh yes, they had a football stadium that held somewhere at around 10,000 people, and they had lights up there for night football. They had a track around the outside of it.
And all the schools used this, including the parochial.
Oh yes, and what happened? And they had a gym inside which held around 7,500 people for basketball. They could play 3 basketball games in there at a time, and they had a swimming pool in there which had their own private Olympic-sized pool, but it had its own Olympic-sized diving area.
Bob, you know, if we had something like that in this town, that might bring the town together if we use the same facility.
Oh, I would think so. You know that.
Is there any talk of something like that?
Well, no, I don't think there is at this time. We talked pretty heavily of it back about it and tried to get something done back, and we had a committee going on back. At that time, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, 8 years ago, but it goes back so long ago because it was right after Mayor Hubbard had gotten sick, and there was talk that they were going to donate the property to the city of Dearborn, and the city was going to do something on the corner of Greenfield and Ford Road. And it never took place. And I said, you know, this is in a group that we met with. I say we, you know, I'm not. I don't mean myself. It takes many people to get together, to get any ideas together, and you must work together to get things accomplished.
Bob, you know what happened? We're out of time.
You got to be kidding.
Did it go fast?
Yes, it's fantastic.
It goes so fast, it's amazing. Before we say goodbye right now, thank you for being a council person. Thank you for all the things you've done for our schools. You've been a citizen who's worked very, very hard. And I think you're an excellent council person. And I say that sincerely, okay? Because I think you're out there trying. Plus the fact you care about our town, and that's important. Bob Knoop.
Thank you very much.
Russ Gibb, I'll be back right after these announcements. Councilman Bob Knoop, an interesting guy. And you know, some kind of guy that would come down. His son is getting married today. We're doing this on Saturday. And he took the time to come out this morning because I called him up and said, Bob, I got a favor. I'd like you to come on down on the show. You know, the interesting thing about all the council people in our town, you can disagree with them on all kind of issues, but they're all decent human beings, and I think we're fortunate, and this guy cares about our town. Hey, speaking of caring about, I appreciate the fact that you take time to drop me a card here, because I'd like to know the guests that you'd like to see on our show, as well as some of the questions that you might want me to raise. Or if you want to come down just as a citizen, you're welcome. So think about that. Let me know about it. For those of you that took the time to watch the show, I would like to say thank you. For those of you that took time to drop me a card or letter, I'd like to say thank you. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for just being you. Russ, Gibb, at random.